Say it's an affront to Australian sovereignty. We know you're committed to stopping the boats. It's fair to say, from what we know, though, that Indonesia's calling the shots on this, aren't they? They're the ones deciding how much information goes public, and they're the ones deciding if asylum seekers go back there or if they go to Christmas Island.
Well, I accept that Indonesia is a sovereign country and I deeply respect their sovereignty, and I've made that point over and over again.
And they're calling the shots on this policy.
We are going to stop the boats, Leigh. I've made that absolutely crystal clear, in country and out of country, that as far as we are concerned, this is a sovereignty issue. And it will be dealt with.
You say you're going to stop the boats. There was a lot of tough talk during the election campaign about turning boats around, but it now appears that when Indonesia stands firm and refuses to take people back, Australia buckles and brings the asylum seekers back here for processing.
Why are you using loaded language, Leigh?
Well, what
You're
do you
using
consider?
loaded
you don't
language
think stop the boats
all the
is
time.
loaded?
No, stopping the boats is something that surely we all want to do. I mean, you'd like to stop these boats, Leigh, surely.
What do you see as the loaded language when I'm basically quoting what the Indonesian government has said?
No, you said that we had somehow buckled. I mean, you're trying to turn this into a testosterone contest. Well, I'm not interested in a testosterone contest.
But if
I'm interested in stopping the boats.
I don't want to get involved in semantics, but if you're saying that you wanted Indonesia to take people back, the Indonesians refused to do so, and then you brought the people back to Australia, that is buckling.
Well, I'm not going to use loaded language myself. I'm not going to run around beating my hairy chest and saying that I've outstared someone, or that, and I'm not going to say that someone has outstared me either. This is not a question of two countries trying to prove who's the toughest with each other. It's a question of two good friends working together for an outcome which is clearly in the best interests of both of our countries.
Given that you believe that the detailed release of information aids and abets people smugglers, you must be furious that Indonesian officials are publicly releasing so much of what you would consider to be operational material.
In the end, all I can absolutely control is how my government responds, and what I've said with the Indonesians is that we're not going to conduct dialogue through the media. If we've got something to say to the Indonesians, we'll say it to them up front, honestly, face to face. I had an excellent discussion with Vice President Budiono today, and that's the way that I intend to conduct myself, and that's the way Australian government ministers intend to conduct ourselves in this new coalition government.
Have you expressed any dissatisfaction to the Indonesian government that it's not conducting itself in the same manner?
Well, again, I'm not in the business of lecturing people. I'm in the business of being an honest, frank, candid, trustworthy partner. I want to stop the boats for Australia's sake and for the sake of common humanity. And if I may say so, Leigh, surely all Australians, including the media, should want to stop the boats, not to provoke an argument.
Of course all Australians would want that, but let me put to you, in your pre-election blueprint, Real Solutions, you wrote that we will restore accountability and improve transparency measures. On the evidence, though, you've done the opposite, haven't you, in this policy area?
In the end, what the public want from us is to see the boats stopped, and we will be accountable to the public at the next election. But I think if you sit down and count the number of press conferences that Scott Morrison has had, he's had 8 press conferences in 8 weeks. I think that stacks up pretty well with the record of the former government and its immigration ministers.
Why is it okay to release information that 75% fewer boats are arriving, but it's not okay to answer many of the questions that I've asked tonight? Because you either presumably believe information is operational or not, and numbers of boat arrivals is presumably operational.
But we never said that we weren't going to provide the numbers arriving. What we said was that we'd produce the numbers once a week as part of an operational briefing, and that's exactly what we're doing. What you're asking, Leigh, is detailed questions about who said what to whom, who moved boats where and why. I'm just not going to provide that kind of information, because that kind of information is unhelpful when it comes to solving this issue, which is a very serious affront to our national sovereignty and is into the bargain, a humanitarian disaster.
When we look at the leaked minutes from the Indonesian Foreign Minister's meeting with Australia's Foreign Minister and Indonesia's public statements and actions regarding asylum seeker boats, at their Foreign Minister's public statements regarding allegations that Australia spies on Indonesia, is it a logical conclusion for a rational person to make that at the very least the relationship's somewhat strained?
It's vastly better now than it was a few months ago. The new government, for argument's sake, was never responsible for the live cattle ban disaster. We were never responsible for the Oceanic Viking fiasco. We were never responsible for the East Timor detention centre disaster.
But you've got the spying, you've got the boat.
Yes, and when did this so-called spying take place, Leigh?
Well, so the spying does take place.
No, when did this so-called spying allegedly take place?
Well, nobody's confirmed that it actually takes place. So do we spy on Indonesia?
Leigh, please. We don't comment on operational matters, but there have been reports in the press, and based on reports in the press, when did this so-called spying allegedly take place? Would you like to tell me?
You tell me.
Under
You're
the
the Prime
former
Minister.
government.
You're the Prime Minister.
Under the former government.
Does it carry on now, and did it not occur also under the Howard government?
Leigh, all countries, all governments gather information. That's hardly a surprise. It's hardly a shock. We use the information that we gather for good, including to build a stronger relationship with Indonesia. And one of the things that I've offered to do today in my discussions with the Indonesian Vice President is to elevate our level of information sharing, because I want the people of Indonesia to know that everything that we do is to help Indonesia as well as to help Australia. Indonesia is a country for which I have a great deal of respect and personal affection based on my own time in Indonesia. I want nothing but the best for Indonesia. And I certainly want, Leigh, the boat stopped, and that is overwhelmingly in the interests of both our countries.
Prime Minister, thank you very much for making time to speak to our audience tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.